In what is a remake of one of the most iconic games we've ever seen in cricket, South Africa take on Australia in the semi-final on Thursday at Kolkata, Eden Gardens. And to talk about it with me, I have Imran Aslam, unofficial South Africa correspondent. How are you doing, Imran?
I'm good, Faris. How are you?
I'm very good, Imran, and I have to talk about this. I think when we started doing the show and you spoke about South Africa, the preview, you were quite bullish on them making it to the semi. I wasn't. I didn't think they would actually make it. So well done on that.
Yeah, I was pretty sure they would make it to the
Yeah.
semis from the
You know,
beginning. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I mean, and they've clearly played some good cricket, right? But I guess before we get into it, if you look at the historical context between these two sides, they've played 7 times in the World Cup, 3 wins each, one tie, which probably people remember as an Australian win because that was the '99 semi-final. So
Yeah,
it's a bit more even than a lot of people probably assumed it would be. They've also, by the way, they also won the last game. So in the last World Cup, South Africa actually beat Australia, even though they've already knocked out. If you look at how the tournament is going, they both have won 7, but very different journeys. So Australia lost the first 2, and they were looking like they may not last that long, and then they've gone on to win everything. South Africa has been all right. They've started well. Again, a very odd pattern with South Africa, Imran, because they've batted first 5 times, scored 311 once and 350 plus 4 times, and had massive over 100-run wins. But when they've chased, they've lost 2 games, one to Netherlands, one to India, where they were 80 all out. Then they've had a narrow win against us, chasing by 1 wicket, and also not the easiest win against Afghanistan 4 days ago. So, how do you see South Africa? How do you see how the two teams have come into the tournament, and how do you think that plays into the match?
yeah. So I think starting with South Africa, we always knew that they are going to be very strong batting first, and they've shown it throughout the tournament that they are very good batting first. We've talked about them a bit earlier on. They do it the old way, maybe the old school way. They keep wicket in hand and then they go for it in the last 10, 15. But they have done really well batting first. And they did struggle batting second, but I think as the tournament has gone on, they've progressively become better. So they beat us by a wicket, a tough win against Afghanistan, but then a pretty easy chase in the end against Bangladesh to
Yeah.
wrap it up. So I think they got better as the tournament went along. Coming to Australia, yeah, a bad start, bad first couple of games. It didn't help, obviously, that they played arguably the two strongest teams in the tournament first up, India and South Africa. Not the easiest way to start your tournament. So they had a tough start, but then they showed what they're made of, I think, and their World Cup pedigree tried to come to the fore, and it hasn't looked back. Head coming back into the side has been, I think, a massive lift for them. They lost March to game back in again. So obviously with Head back and scoring as well, I think that's a massive lift to them. So they're both looking very, very strong. It's hopefully should be a very good game, but both of them have developed and progressed through the tournament, and I think both look very strong right now.
So if you look at where the game is happening tomorrow is the Eden Gardens. We've had 4 games there so far. 3 of them have been won by the side batting first. The only game that was won by the side chasing was the Bangladesh-Pakistan game, where we had Bangladesh all out for 204. If you look at the other games, Netherlands made 230 against Bangladesh and defended it. Then you had India scoring 320 against South Africa, by the way, where they were 80 all out, so not great memories for them. And then England also made 337 against Pakistan, which defended easily. So I guess you can't really say what par is based on the result, but it looks like if you bat first and score, perhaps it's you and probably it is a ground where you can look to score 300 plus, and once you do that, you're probably in a pretty strong position.
Yeah, I think yeah. So I think chasing 300 plus on the ground is going to be tough. If you look at the games you talked about, especially I think going back to the India South Africa game, Kuldeep took a fifer there, right? So I think we saw as the game went on, it became slower, started taking some turn. Obviously, you could argue that by the time Kuldeep came on to bowl, South Africa, the game was probably over as a contest.
But it wasn't an 80 all-out game at that time.
Exactly, it wasn't an 80 all-out game. So the five from Kuldeep, I think that really shows that spin can potentially play a big role here. And I think that's something that we probably are going to talk about as we go along. How does South Africa especially go in with their selection? Is it Shamsi or is it
We will
Otsi coming back
come to
in?
that. So if you look at how South Africa is shaping up generally, right? So De Kock has got a lot of the headlines for his 400s. He hasn't scored 100 in 3 or 4 games now, so it looks a bit like it's a bit of a lean patch. But he's averaging 65 still at 110 strike rate. I think the unheralded star has actually been Van der Dussen because he's averaging 55. Strike rate's a bit on the low side on 88, but he seems to be the solid rock which they build the innings around. But then they also have guys like Klaasen is averaging 40 at a 140 strike rate. That's actually incredible. Even I think one of the key players is actually Marco Jansen. He's also averaging 39 at the 110 strike rate. So I think he's the one who's bringing balance. Even Miller's averaging 35. I mean, I guess the only guys who haven't really showed up with the bat is Bavuma, I guess. I guess maybe if you look at these stats split by batting first and chasing, we may have had a different story. But overall, the batting numbers look good. So how do you see their batting shaping up, Imran? Do you see any chinks?
Yeah, I think definitely their batting is strong, and we've talked about it before as well. Like they've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 guys in their side who can score those 60, 70 ball hundreds, and pretty much most of them have done it as well. De Kock definitely is very strong at the top, and him and Van der Dussen have played this ideal role of setting a very, very solid foundation, and then they let basically Miller, Klaasen, and even Janssen at the end go for broke. Bavuma obviously is his form has been a bit of a concern. He's also missed a couple of games because of injury. Uh, Hendricks came in one of the game, got an 80 yard, but then didn't score in the next game. So I think if Bavuma is fit, he does obviously slot right back in there. But lack of runs from him is a bit of a concern, I think, and that's where Bavuma is not in form. If the cock goes early, then that puts South Africa under quite a bit of pressure. With obviously we know they don't bat deep, and they like to keep 7, 8 wickets in hand for the last 15 odd. So if you can get through the cock early, it can probably be a big blow for them.
And if you look at the bowling, right? So Kudza's he got 18 wickets at an average, or he's averaging 18 at a strike rate of 19. 18 wickets at the 19 average. Shamsi's got 7 wickets at 24. Janssen again, Marco Janssen has got 7 wickets at 24. And then we have Maharaj, by the way, who's bowling at an economy of about 3.7 or 3.8. So I think he's been really key at keeping things tight in the middle. Rabada himself is actually had an economy of under 5 as well. So I think the bowling seems to be coming together fairly well. There aren't any obvious chinks in the bowling, I guess, except for maybe I'm not sure if they have a decent 6th bowling option if they need one.
Yeah, I think no major weakness. You're right. Lack of a 6th bowling option could potentially be a factor. Markram's chipped in with a few overs here and there. I think for me, the real standout performance in their bowling has been Janssen and his power play wickets. I think he's by far the highest power play wicket taker. So he's by far picked up the most wickets in the first 10 overs so far, and he's been very effective with his height, with the bounce he gets, bowls at good pace. He's been very effective in that. I think again they will be banking on him to come in and get some early breakthrough, and then Maharaj obviously keeps it tight in the end. I think talking about the bowling, it's going to be an interesting toss-up between Kotzi and Shamsi for the last slot there.
Yeah, let's see
if you go back to the India game, right, and Kuldeep's 5-4. If you are going to be batting first, I think going with 2 spinners against Australia might not be a bad ploy. But keeping in mind what Maxwell did to Afghanistan spinners, you might be wary of that as well.
We just come to the 11, but I think let's look at Australia very quickly, right? So again, Maxi's averaging 75 at a strike rate of 150, right? But there's been 2 massive innings that have swayed this. Then they have Marsh averaging 60, a strike rate of 110, Warner 55, strike rate of 105. But I think 2 concerning factors are Smith averaging 38 at a strike rate of 78, and Labuschagne 35 at a strike rate of 75 as well. So I guess the question becomes, if these 2 play too many balls, I guess, right, that becomes a concern. Having said that, both of them may not even be in the 11 tomorrow. And everybody around is explosive as hell, right? So I feel like they probably are one team that can absorb 2 such guys, even if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think they definitely have the cushion there, right? If it's their top 3 are, just batting phenomenally well, and if the top three get in, they're all going to score at 120, 130 strike rates. And if there's a collapse, you bank on Smith and or Labuschagne to come over. And then after the top three, again, you have explosion coming in with Maxwell and Stark. Cummins as well can hit it around. So they have the cushion there, but I think it's going to be again for them an interesting selection toss-up between most likely Labuschagne and Stoinis.
Let's see, we'll come to that. If you look at Australia's bowling, so Zampa's been the star after struggling with the first two games, 22 wickets at an average of 19. Hazelwood has 12 wickets, average of 31. The big surprise is Cummins and Stark. Both have taken 10 wickets and they're averaging in the 40s, by the way. So I think that's a definite concern. And they've gone for a lot of runs as well. I think Maxwell doesn't have a good average, but he's going at an economy of 4.9. So I think he is, again, I think really key, because if you look at the backup option, which are Marsh and Stoinis, again, their economies are way over 7. So how do you see their bowling coming together for Australia?
I think Maxwell's been a revelation. I don't think you're expecting him to pitch in solidly with 10 overs every game he played in. So he filling in that slot and bowling 10 overs regularly has really helped them a lot. Zampa, standout bowler of the tournament so far, right? Highest wicket taker on the tour of the tournament. The interesting thing there is a very ordinary record against South Africa. He went for plenty in the last game against South Africa that they lost. But even if you go back to the series that these two sides played in South Africa a bit prior to the World Cup, Zampa went for a lot of runs there. So I think he's got quite a bad record against South Africa. So yes, he's the highest wicket taker in the tournament, but he struggled against the South Africans. Stark, Cummins have had a tough tournament. Stark, I think, hasn't been a good tournament for the star left-arm quicks anywhere. Bolt, Shaheen, Stark, all of them have struggled. Hazelwood's been the pick for me for the quicks, definitely.
Yeah, and I think let's get into the 11s now, because you've been hinting at that. So if you look at the 11s, they're on your screen now. I guess for Australia, the big choice is, again, I think whether Labuschagne or Stoinis plays. Stoinis gives the extra option with the ball, even though they haven't used him much. He did take wickets against Pakistan. How do you see them lining up, and what do you think their best 11 is?
I think they will go with Labuschagne, but if you ask me, I would go with Stoinis. I think Stoinis is the attacking option. South Africa, especially, if they bat first, are more likely than not going to put up a big score. You want to beef up your batting with somebody like Stoinis over Labuschagne. Stoinis also obviously can pitch in with the ball. Sixth bowler can potentially be a weakness against South Africa, especially we've seen the likes of Miller, Klassen taking on spin, and if Zampa and Maxwell start going for runs, you need the backup that Stoinis can provide there can be really handy. So I would prefer them to go with Stoinis over Labuschagne, definitely.
And I guess Labuschagne, even if he plays at 5, and in that context, if the third wicket goes down after the 30th over, chances are they'll probably send Inglis and Maxwell over him anyway. So he's almost a bit like insurance, which is not exactly a very Australian thing to do, right? To play a guy at 5 for insurance. So I guess you're right. They'll probably go the other way. The big question on the other side, I'm sorry, before we get to South Africa, I think Inglis, by the way, after initial 50, has also not been scoring too many runs. So I think he obviously will play, because I don't see Carey coming back in. But that's also a bit of a question mark for Australia, by the way.
Yeah, but I think they'll stick with him.
Yeah, of course.
At this stage.
I think if you look at South Africa, I guess the big question is, does Shamsi come in? And if he comes in, who does he come in for? I actually have Shamsi down as a slash against Gidi, because I feel like he hasn't had the best tournament. He's averaging 35. And I feel like Kuja and Janssen, they can both bat, they both are among the wickets also. So how do you see this?
I think I would want them to play Shamsi. I would have thought that it was a toss-up between Coetzee and Shamsi, but I think you make an interesting point. It could be Ngidi. Generally, South Africa has been keen, if Rabada and Ngidi are both fit, they've been keen to play both of them. And over the past few games, when they brought Shamsi in, he has replaced Coetzee a couple of times.
Yeah.
I really like the way Coetzee has been bowling, the pace, the aggression, everything. I would want to keep him in the 11. But I would also definitely want, I think, 2 spinners here in Kolkata.
So it's one of those things, right, where Andre Nokia is not even here. If he was here, this would be a much tougher conversation, right? So I think in some ways, it's probably helped the balance of the side that one of your premier quicks out of the three is missing actually. But otherwise, I probably would have him over Ngidi, I guess. But I guess we have to talk about this now. So the way I see it, look, we can do all the analysis you want, but the reality is that when you tell someone South Africa playing Australia in a knockout, there's only one way our heads tell us this game is going to go, right? Australia in a knockout will be too strong for most people, and South Africa again is the other end of that extreme. I guess, what are the 2-3 things you think need to happen for South Africa to actually win this?
I think first of all, the coin needs to fall their way. So I think that's honestly for South Africa, it's half the battle. I don't see South Africa winning this if they're chasing at all. I mean, I'd give them less than 5% chance of winning it if they're chasing. Their only bet, I mean, the only scenario in which South Africa can potentially win this if they're chasing is they bowl Australia out for 220 or something, but that's not unlikely. So for me, South Africa winning has to come with them batting first and putting up a big score and then defending it. So they need to win the toss and then they need to come in, do what they've been doing and put up that 350 odd total and defend it.
Yeah. So Mike, I guess my next question for you is, if either team wins the toss, what will they look to do? With South Africa, you're quite clear they will bat first.
I think both will be looking to bat first. Yeah. It's a semi-final. The pressure of scoreboard pressure is always big. In a knockout, it's bigger. We've seen Kolkata slowing down in the second half. I mean, we had an easy chase, but we were scoring. I mean, it was a
200 chase.
It was just 200 chase, but we've seen Kolkata slowing down, taking some turn as well. So I think definitely both sides will be looking to bat first for sure.
Yeah, makes sense. I also think, I mean, I guess I have the same thought. I'd be very surprised if anyone opts to chase tomorrow.
Yeah, the only caveat there is that there are some chances of rain.
Yes.
And if it does rain, or if there is a very high chance of rain in the second half, then obviously you want to reconsider that. And if Duckworth Lewis is going to come into it, but I think that's only something that you need to take a call on the morning.
I don't trust Indian weather forecast anymore. I'm sorry. But I think what they're saying though is it is a bit of rain, but it probably will not be very disruptive. So it's not going to become a 20-over game. You might lose 5 overs here and there. So it's not sure to be a massive factor. But let's see. So I guess again, for both teams, what do you think their target first inning score would be, which they would be comfortable with if they bat first?
I think South Africa would be looking to get 350. With Australia's batting, the way Head, Marsh, Maxwell, Warner, the guys have been batting, I think they will need 350. Yes, they scored what, 320-ish, I think, last time around against Australia. Yeah. Around that much, and they defended it easily. Head wasn't playing in that game. Head is back now, and obviously he is in form. Going back to Australia-South Africa series that these two played recently, we had some high scores there, and Australia put up some good fights in a couple of chases as well. I think South Africa will be looking for 350 plus if they're batting first. Australia, probably, I would bank Australia would defend 300 against South Africa. But I think, again, they would probably coming out looking to get 320 odd as well. But I think even if Australia scores 300, 310, they'd probably defend it against South Africa.
I guess my view on that is that I feel like if South Africa bat first, I feel like if they get 320, they will be the favorite for me. So again, the more they get above that, the better the chance. Yeah, but I feel like 320, if South Africa get that, it may not be that easy, especially in Kolkata. And it's probably easy, right? It's also harder to choke when you're defending a big score once you already scored that, right? So I mean, I don't see those things kicking in either. But
it's not a choke anymore. Then it's
not a joke. Then it's really something else. But if Australia bat first, I feel like, you know what, even at 280 to 90 could be good enough, given how South Africa has been chasing. So I think again, I really hope as a neutral fan that South Africa bat first, so that it really brings them into the game. Otherwise, maybe not the best game of cricket. Otherwise, if Australia bat first. Any key players to watch out for you from either side?
So I think Peacock, obviously, we've seen. I think Miller. I mean, that's just a gut feel or a hunch that he's probably due another explosive innings. On the bowling side for South Africa, I think it's Jansen.
Okay.
Yeah, Jansen, I think it's very important. A couple of power play wickets there, and that could really turn things around.
Yeah.
For Australia, not sure if qualifies as a key player to watch out for. I'd be interested to see how Zampa goes again, given coming in as the highest wicket taker of the tournament, but having a really ordinary record against this opposition. How he goes, and that may well end up defining how the game goes. Right? If South Africa takes Zampa for, I think they took him for 80 in the last match. If they take him for 70, 80 runs, that sets them well on course for that
Australia is a
victory,
very
for
different
sure.
side though from nine games ago, though I have to say. I mean, they've
True,
really
true,
changed a
true.
lot. So
Yeah.
maybe I should have started with this, but in terms of the legacy of both the teams, how important is this game? So for South Africa, my view is that if they manage to beat Australia, it might be the biggest win of their existence since they came back into cricket in '92, beating Australia in a semi-final. And even if they go on to win the final, I would say this is the biggest win because them beating Australia would just be really quite a moment.
I think for sure it's the biggest win. I mean, if they beat Australia, I mean maybe you can talk about the 438 game as
No, I mean, look,
something
in
that
bilateral, South Africa has had a great record, right? So that's not really an
true,
issue.
but just the context of chasing 438, right? The first time someone scores 300, 400, and you chase it. But yeah, definitely, I think this would be their biggest win. They'd finally bury the demons of 99 Kluser and Donald.
Yeah.
Definitely be their biggest win. I'm going to go on a limb and say that one of the reasons I wanted to do this preview over the other semi-final because I feel that this semi-final is going to be the winner of the semi-final is going to be the World Cup winner.
Interesting.
So,
and Indian fans, please start commenting in the video. But interesting. And I guess from an Australia point of view, so when this year started, there was talk about this Australian side could potentially go down as the greatest side since the 90s side, at least, if they were to beat India in India, win the Ashes, and win the World Cup. They did not beat India in India. They came close. They drew the Ashes. And the World Cup is still there for the taking. So from the legacy of this generation, right, which again, I for me, they are the greatest Australian side since that side. I feel like it's one of the strongest sides, right? And a lot of the guys will probably not play another ODI World Cup. I'm not sure about Cummins and Stark, Warner, Smith, etc. So how do you see the legacy of this for Australia?
Yeah, so see, Australia has won so many World Cups that it's just if they win it, it's another World Cup for a lot of them. A lot of the guys actually were part of the 2015 squad, right? That won. So Stark, Cummins, Smith, etc. So all of them do have a World Cup to their name. So the stars of this Australian team, or the big stars of this Australian team that are not going to be playing the next World Cup, have already won a World Cup. So it's really not, I think, career defining or legacy defining for those guys.
Makes sense.
The ones that have not yet won a World Cup will probably be around to play another one. So I don't think it's that big in the grand scheme of things for this Australian side.
I would say that apparently Ravi Shastri said that if India do not win this World Cup, they probably won't be able to win the next two either because the side will really transition and there'll be a bunch of new people in. I feel like Australia, that might even be true for Australia because I feel like if they don't win this one, then I feel like they'll probably be there with a bunch of guys whose names you don't even know today in the next World Cup or two. So I think that could be quite a turn for them. Also, I think it's important. I mentioned this in the Australia preview before we started the World Cup. Since '87, every single World Cup, except for when Pakistan won in '92, every single World Cup has been won by either one of the hosts or by Australia. So this could very easily be a final of the host and Australia, by the way. So let's see how this goes ahead. But I guess final calls, Imran. This is what we pay you the big bucks for. What's the prediction?
I'm going to go with South Africa.
South Africa, okay. I think. I mean, look, I've seen too much cricket to be able to say Australia, to bet against Australia against anybody, and against South Africa, I have to go with Australia. So
I know it's really hard to bet, like you're saying, it's really hard to bet against Australia in a knockout when they're playing anybody. It's harder still to bet against Australia in a knockout when they're playing South Africa.
Yeah.
But I just feel that this South African team is not tainted by a lot of those ghosts of the past. Yes, they've heard about all of them, but none of those guys have been in those situations. They have not had a choking experience, etc. I think that's one thing that goes.
I think so. One of the podcasts was saying, right, like would a guy like Klaasen really give a shit that Donald and Klusener had run out 24 years ago? Like, does it really impact them or not? Right. So
exactly. So I think Yeah, and I also think, I mean, looking at the way South Africa has been playing, they have played some really, really good cricket. They should be high on confidence, having beaten Australia in the league, having beaten Australia in the last series that these two sides played. So I think in the last 7 or 8 games that these sides have played, South Africa has a much better record. So they should take that confidence into it. And honestly, if they win the toss, I would be much, much more confident
Yeah.
of South
I
Africa.
mean, I
If they win
really
the
hope
toss,
so.
I
South
think it's a
Africa with the
70%
toss,
chance in
because
my mind.
otherwise I feel like the game may just be over if Australia bat first.
Then yeah, definitely. If South Africa bats second, then I won't give them a chance. But I think if South Africa bats first, I'd give them a 70% chance of pulling it off.
But for those of you watching, please, if you have a view on what South Africa should look to score if they bat first, please leave a comment. Imran, before we finish up, we will quickly do a little quiz. It is linked to what we've been talking about. So, what was the equation before Klusener and Donald were run out in the South Africa-Australia semi-final in the ODI World Cup '99? How many runs of how many balls?
1 of 4.
One needed of 4?
Yeah.
It was 1 of 3. So you pretty close. But yeah, so I think the way it worked is I think they needed 9 in the last over. Klusener hit 2 fours. Then there was a dot ball. There was a run out.
I forgot the dot ball.
And then yes.
I forgot the dot ball. So I remember the two fours. I remember the 2 4s. Yeah. He hit them, as Shastri would say, like a tracer bullet.
Yeah. I'm guessing a lot of South African guys are probably not young enough not old enough to remember this, right? Because this happened 24 years ago. So if the guys are 29, 30, they probably they don't remember this.
Exactly.
But they must have heard about it.
Some of them might not even have been born, actually.
That's what I mean, yeah. I mean, look, having said that, they've choked since, right? So like the 2007 semi-final where South Africa batted first and they were 150 all out was a real disaster. And then against New Zealand in 2011 and 2015 against New Zealand again, actually. So anyway, let's see how this plays out.
They've had, I think, the really, I mean, from recent memory, the one that would have hurt them a lot, and the one that I think did hurt them a lot was 2015, right? I mean, that South African team.
Yeah, because I feel like that was also the last World Cup for a lot of their, maybe it's some of the best players of all time, right? For Amla, De Villiers, Steyn, Moko, all of those guys.
Yeah. And for Steyn to be just, hit back over his head for a 6 like that. I can't remember ever seeing Steyn hit back over his head like that.
And that's unfortunately one of my favorite bowlers, but he just that's one of the things you'll always remember him for, unfortunately, right? But thank you for being on the show, Imran.
Pleasure, Fafiz.
Hope to have you again at some point. And if you like the video, please subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment on who you think is going to win this game, and we'll be back. We'll be back after the India-New Zealand semi-final, reviewing that game. In the meantime, stay tuned to the shiny side.